Welcome to Breaking Down Mental Health with Dr. Jones. In these educational videos, Dr. Jones will discuss mental health diagnosis, clinical supervision, using technology in counseling, multiculturalism, and many other topics to help you get a healthy understanding of why mental health is important. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button if you enjoy these videos. In this video, we're going to be looking at the topic of social media ethics. It's important for us to have a better understanding and a thorough knowledge of how we can use social media in the right way when we're coming in contact with clients and just creating a social media presence in general. So we want to spend some time today looking at this topic. And so as we begin to look at this topic, there are three main objectives that we want to tackle. First one is we just want to understand the purpose of social media. Social media has been around for such a long time now, and so I think it's always a good thing for us to kind of revisit what the purpose of social media really is, and then as our work as mental health professionals, how does that interconnection happen? Also, we want to learn to use social media ethically. There are some, specifically the ACA Code of Ethics, what we'll be talking about today, gives us some guidelines to go by when it comes to the use of using social media in an ethical manner. So we want to spend some time today looking at that. And also learn the basics of creating a social media policy. It's important for us if we're going to be interacting with clients in any type of social media, that we have some type of policy created that we know how to use and the clients are familiar with. That way there won't be any misunderstandings and we can give the best possible care to our clients. And so we're going to be hitting these three topics today in this video. And so first of all, we want to define, first of all, what is social media. And so I just broke this down into a few separate terms here so we can get a good understanding of it. First of all, we want to look at the word social. This is just the innate need for humans to connect with each other. We want to connect with each other. We are in a society where we don't always find time to connect, but in order for us to be social, there's a connection piece that we all strive from. And so whether we're an introvert or an extrovert, however that falls for us, wherever we fall on the Enneagram, if you're a big Enneagram person, at the end of the day, we want to be social. We want to know, how do I be able to connect with someone else? So that's a social aspect of social media, is that the purpose is to connect. Also, the media piece is just the tools that are used to store and deliver information or data. And so there are many different tools out there that we're able to use to be able to store this data in a place where we're able to access it at any time that we like to be able to access it. And then when it comes to social media, this is that virtual technology that is used to connect individuals, build relationships, and extend communication. One of the positive things about social media is that the purpose of it is to connect individuals. But this building relationship piece has become really important, because there have been times where social media can be used in a negative way. And so because of that, we want to make sure we're using it in a positive way as we go through this training. And also to extend communication. That communication in and of itself, all of it should not be done through social media. This is just an extension of the regular communication that we have. But social media has given us a place where we're able to communicate to one another, with one another, and we want to be able to know how we can do this right. Also, with social media, it can be synchronous or asynchronous. So synchronous means it happens at the same time, where there's two more people we are on that platform at the exact same time, exchanging ideas, and so we can do it synchronously, or it can be asynchronous, where my information is sent out and I'm waiting for a reply from someone else, and that can take from anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes or for a few hours. And so it can be asynchronous or synchronous. One thing I want to spend a little time on is talking about the fact that social media is amoral. That social media in and of itself is not a good thing or a bad thing. At the end of the day, when we think about social media, what we're talking about is, how is it being used? So social media can be used for something that's good. It can be used for something that's positive, but it can also be used to harm and hurt other people. And so there's so many people come out and say, no, social media is bad. Social media is bad. Well, not necessarily. It matters on how you go about and use it. It can be used to encourage other people. It can be used to bring other people together, but it also can be used to destroy relationships and also harm people as well. So it's all, once again, goes back to the person who is using that account, who is sending out that message, who's posting that video. It goes back to them. And so their intent and also the way in which they come across to other people will determine whether or not that media they put out is a good thing or a bad thing. But at the end of the day, social media does not have morals. It's amoral. So here's a few social media statistics, and it's surprising how much this has changed just over the past couple of years. Right now, the internet has 4.72 billion users. That is a lot of people who are on the internet, being able to access information any time of the day, being able to look up just about anything that they like to be able to look up at any time. So you just think about the country that you're from, the country that you're watching this from, and think about how many people are currently on the line accessing information. To me, that's a little scary. But it's also a positive thing too, to see that so many people have access to information, and we're just in this digital age where we have so many people there who are able to provide free information for other people, and to be able to connect with people in such a different way than we were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Also, we're seeing now that over 60% of the total global population is active on the internet. Which is a pretty staggering statistic. This has increased just over the past 4 years. I think we were around 40% at that time, but now we're over half of the global population still has access to the internet. Also, an interesting fact is looking at the average daily time spent on the internet is 7 hours, and we know what averages mean. That means some people this is a little less, and for others this is more. And so this is where some of the concern can come with some individuals, is that how much time am I using on the internet when I'm connecting with other individuals? And if I'm not connecting with people in a face-to-face environment ever, what does that look like? And so this number of 7 hours, once again, it's going up. I think it was back just a couple years ago, we were looking at around 5 hours, but now we're up to 7 hours. And I think this is something that will continue to grow just because of the nature of our society. And about 93% of internet users are accessing the internet via mobile devices. And so that's, once again, I think that's a good thing for us to understand too, because as we're thinking about telemental health counseling, as we're thinking about connecting with people, we have a great population of people out there who are able to connect with us in these counseling services, and the majority of them are using mobile devices. So it's important for us to know how to go about doing this in the right way, so we're doing a great service for our clients. Now, when we think about social media outlet use, these numbers have significantly changed. I remember my first time looking at these numbers was back in 2016, and so these numbers were correct as at the end of December of 2020, and so things could continue to change. But we're just noticing with Facebook, there's 2.5 billion users of Facebook, and so it's more than doubled just in the past couple of years. Instagram has 1 billion users. TikTok, 315 million users. Snapchat, 280 million users. Pinterest, 459 million users. LinkedIn, 749 million users. And YouTube has 2.1 billion users. And so from all these, so basically what this is helping us to see is that the social media is being used by everyone. It has a place in everyone's life. That is people connect in so many different ways, and there's multiple applications outside of these where people are connecting with. Previously, when I talked about this topic, I talked about Twitter. Twitter use is actually going down over the past few years, but these are some of the most used apps that are out there right now, social media outlets that are out there, and we're seeing that the use is going up. And so just just when you look at stuff like, once again, like Instagram with 1 billion users and Facebook with 2.5, that is a lot. That's a lot of people. And the reality is, most people don't just have one social media outlet they use. They will use multiple social media outlets. And so what this does is you're putting a digital footprint out there. More people are knowing about you, which can be a good or a bad thing depending on what you're putting out there. And so this just helps us to see that there are many different places where you're able to have a presence and a digital presence, and there are people who are watching it all the time. So just with that introduction, given us an understanding of how many people are using social media and how many people are out there, let's take a quick look at the 2014 ACA Code of Ethics, and we're going to specifically be looking at the social media piece. There's a different video that I have out there. It talks about the broader spectrum of the Code of Ethics, but we want to look specifically at this part just on the social media ethics when it comes to the ACA Code. And so the first thing it talks about is that the virtual or professional presence. And says in cases where counselors wish to maintain a professional and a personal presence for social media use, separate professional and personal web pages and profiles are created to clearly distinguish between the two kinds of virtual presence. And so this is what the code says. So let's kind of break that down a little bit and see what do they mean by that. And so when I talk about this, there's at least 5 main points I want to bring out here. First of all, we're looking at maintaining separate identities in the online environment. And so for me specifically, I make sure that I have 2 different social media outlets for most of the things I use. So for Facebook, I have a public profile that's used for friends and family, things of that nature. But I also have a professional one on there as well. When it comes to Instagram, once again, I have 2 separate entities on there, 2 separate accounts on there, and I do everything I can to keep those 2 things separated, because the reality is we don't want to get those 2 worlds mixed up. My professional life and my personal life are 2 different things, so I want to keep those 2 things separate. Now, can your personal life affect your professional life? Most certainly can. We've seen that happen over the past few years with individuals posting things on their personal profile and it end up affecting them professionally. So I just think this topic is something for us to be spending some time in, so we know how to approach this from the right way. Also, just keeping personal information about family, etc., on your personal social media. This is for me. This is an easy thing for me. I don't put anything about my family whatsoever on my business social media. I keep those things separate, and so once again, it's just an important part of that, because we want to make sure that people are able to access a lot of things online, but I want to make their job a little bit harder if I can, and so what I do is I just keep those 2 separate identities. But on my professional sites, there's nothing about my family. There's nothing personal on there. Nothing about my personal beliefs or whatever the case may be. Nothing about politics either. What I basically do is on these sites is I end up keeping these information separate. That way, when people go to my social media and they look at what I have to offer, my personal stuff is one place, and then my professional stuff is in another place. Another thing we want to be aware of is your privacy settings on your personal social media. I think this is one of those things that comes up every couple of years. Different social media platforms change privacy settings for you, and so you have to be very careful about your privacy on social media. Some people use a different name for their personal social media, which I think that's fine if that works for them on that aspect of it. But I think there's another piece of that too, is being aware of your privacy settings. Do you have it open so that only your friends are able to see your personal social media? Or do you have it connected in such a way that the friends of your friends are able to connect? And the reason why it's important to understand that sometimes our friends may be connected to the clients that we have. And so if they end up making a comment on something about our personal life, then they're able to, our clients then are able to see that information as well. So once again, just being mindful of that on your social media settings and making sure that's checked, that your all the information you have, if at all possible, make it so it's only to the people who you are friends with Also with your social media, your friends list itself. Or is everyone able to see who you're friends with? That's another thing I'm mindful of. And so those are just a couple of things you want to be considering when it comes to the privacy of your social media, is to try to keep it as private as possible, just so you can once again keep your personal and professional life separated from each other. Also, a realization for us is that any phone contacts you have can potentially have contact to your personal social media. So let me explain that. If you've ever been on Facebook or Instagram or some of these other social media platforms, there will be times where it says, "Here's a person that you may know." And the reason why it's telling you that these are people that you may know is because you have that person's phone number in your phone. And so if you're keeping client phone numbers in your phone, then some social media is picking that up and it's pulling all those phone numbers in and it's making a direct connection with you. And it goes the opposite way as well for your clients if they have your personal phone number. So what's a good way of avoiding this? Don't use your personal phone when you work with your clients. I think that helps out quite a bit on that. But when you do that, whenever you do keep your clients' personal their numbers on your personal phone, it does give them a direct connection to your personal social media, even with some of the privacy settings. So you just want to be careful about that. And also be careful about engaging with current or previous clients on your business social media. So I have several business social media accounts, and there'll be times where clients will send a message about, do we take a certain insurance, or they're wanting an appointment or things of that nature. And I try to make sure in my interaction with them, I'm very brief and to the point about certain things. I don't want to get into a informal counseling session with a client with someone who's thinking about therapy, or someone who's a previous client or current client. So what I simply try to do is answer the question. If they're asking about an appointment, I will put in the phone number for my practice and tell them to call at a certain time, and someone will get back to them, and then I'm finished with that message there. But you just don't want to get into a situation where it looks like you are doing a informal counseling session through your business social media. And so I do have some clients who have been on my business social media before, and on a lot of my business social media, it is basically like motivational things, motivational topics. If the office is going to be closed, different things like that. Those things are harmless, and so there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But I try to keep it there, and then that way, when it comes to interactions, the interactions are few. But even where clients are asking about appointment times, things like that, those usually go into a messenger box online, and it's not something that's connected where other people are able to see that. So just got to once again be careful about your privacy settings, and be careful about your engagement level with your previous or current clients. Next thing talks about social media as part of informed consent. It says counselors clearly explain to their clients as part of the informed consent procedure the benefits, limitations, and boundaries of the use of social media. So let's break this down a little bit and talk about what this looks like. So one of the things that we want to do is that, and here's 5 points I want to make here, is one is that you want to outline the expectations of social media use with your client in a written informed consent. And so I send my clients an informed consent about my social media policy, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But I let them know what my social media policy is, that I do not friend them on social media, I don't connect with them on social media on my personal pages, things of that nature. And the reason why I do that, so they know exactly what the boundaries are that I have with them. So it's important for us to have those boundaries that are set. Also, just the fact that therapists can use your social media as a psychoeducational tool. Maybe you have found a good TED Talk about depression or anxiety, whatever the case may be. Those things are great. Post those things to your business social media. I think those are great resources for your client to be able to use. But once again, you don't want to get into a conversation online with your client about about those resources that you're providing that way, or them coming in and saying, "Hey, I'll talk to you about this in our next session." So you have to be careful about that. And so, especially with Facebook, I make it so that my when it comes to the comments and things that are left. I'm very careful about what my clients are saying on there. But you can use social media as a psychoeducational tool. It's a good way to do that. Just once again, be mindful of how it can be used in a positive way. Also, therapists discourage clients from checking in on business social media sites. This has been something that's been out for a long time. And so I know that was something I used to do with my business just as an advertising thing, just that when I would get there, checking in to my counseling place. But the problem is when your clients end up doing that, it puts a definite connection between them being your client. Now, obviously, clients have the ability to do that if they want to do that. We really can't control that, but I'm going to discourage my clients from doing that, because when they do that, they're basically breaking their own confidentiality. And so there's no way to disable the checking in ability on different social media platforms. So the best thing I think to do is just to discourage your clients from using that feature. Also, it's not appropriate for clients or therapists to friend each other or family members. And this is something that I've seen several therapists get in trouble with their counseling boards over. They will add their client on social media. They may add their client's parent as a way of communicating with them, or whatever the case may be. And the problem with that is that it's just not appropriate for those two things to happen. Once again, I'm trying to keep these two things separate. So if I'm going to connect with them, I need to connect with them through the business social media that I have. But even with that connection, I'm still not talking about counseling related stuff with my client in the social media environment. Because the reality of it is, anything that's on that social media, it can be hacked, it can be snapped to other people, and that becomes a HIPAA violation for you there. So I just want to be very careful about that. And so I just do not add or friend clients or family members. And this even goes for former clients. There are some out there who say, well, what's the problem with that? They're no longer my client. Well, the reality of it is they may end up coming back to you in the future. And so if we notice about social media, sometimes people put things out on social media that they wouldn't necessarily say to somebody face to face. And so because of that, it's important to make sure that we are keeping these lines drawn, keeping those and making sure that when I'm doing that, I just do not connect with my former clients or have a relationship with them in that way. It sometimes does not work out well. And so I just, if someone's been a client, I just don't connect with them on social media. And also avoid using social media messenger services to contact your clients. There are so many great tools out there already for you to connect with your clients. And so I'm going to encourage you to use some of those versus using the messenger services that are out there. Once again, these messenger services are not HIPAA compliant or HIPAA secure. And so because of that, you can be putting yourself in a bad situation there. So as much as possible, try to stay away from the messenger services when you're trying to contact your clients. Use your business line or whatever the case may be. Contact them through your electronic health record if it allows you to do that. But I'm going to stay away from any service that is not HIPAA secure. Also, client virtual presence. Counselors respect the privacy of their client's presence on social media unless given the consent to view such information. So we want to break this one down as well. And so basically, the most simple way to look at this one is we don't need to look up, investigate, check out, or research. I try to use as many terms there that people use, or your clients on social media unless you have the written permission to do so. This puts you in a bad situation quickly when we are looking up our clients on social media. The Code of Ethics is saying we shouldn't have access to that. And you may be thinking, well, this is public information they put out on social media, so why do I not have access to that? Well, the reason why is because you could end up getting information they were not yet ready to tell you about. And so it's important for you to not connect with them or to look up their social media as a previous client, or if you know you're about to do an intake with someone and you're just trying to check out and find out things about them, you don't want to do that. Sometimes therapists will say, well, my client, they have an issue with drinking, and so I went on the social media, and so I saw that they went to a party and they were drinking, and there's pictures everywhere on social media. Should I bring it up? I'm going to tell them no, because you shouldn't have been looking at that information in the first place. And if the client wanted you to know about that, they would tell you those things. And so we're not investigators. That is not our job as mental health professionals. And so the code is reflecting that since we're not investigators, it's important for us to make sure that we are staying away from the social media of art that belongs to our clients. But just do not do that unless you have written permission. So if you have written permission from your client, go for it. You're able to do that. But if you don't have written permission, you will need to stay away from their social media presence. Also, use of public social media. The counselors take precautions to avoid disclosing confidential information through public social media. So let's talk about that a little bit. So one thing I know that is a reality for all mental health practitioners. There are sometimes clients that you are not always, it's not always fun to see them. That's probably the best way for me to put that. That when you come in contact with them and you are counseling with them, sometimes you may be in a situation with them that becomes very frustrating. And that's normal. That's going to happen as a professional. But the problem is there are so many different groups on different social media outlets where people can get therapists get into groups. And I'm a part of a lot of these groups. And one thing you begin to notice is that sometimes when people get frustrated, they want to express their frustration about their clients. And you know what? I think that's okay for us to be able to have certain places to do that. But the problem is sometimes people are so specific about issues that are going on with their clients that it's very easy to figure out who their client is and who the person is they're talking about. And so I guess a good way of doing this is just don't discuss frustration or client issues on personal or professional social media. And so you have to be, you definitely want to stay away from doing that and not putting that information out there. If your frustration level is that high, do some consulting about that. I can talk to your therapist about it, do things of that nature. But when you put that out on social media, you are basically talking about your client in a public venue, and sometimes it becomes very easy to figure out who these people are. And so you've essentially broken confidentiality. It may be saying, well, my client is a star football player, and they just recently got hurt, and they came in today for the counseling session. They were complaining so much about this issue. Well, all it takes for me to do as a client, as a therapist, is to go look and see, okay, what city is this person practicing in? And oh, look, in the town that they're talking about, it's a very small town, and the star football player just got hurt last week. I wonder if this is who the star person talking about. So the reality is it possibly could be. And so that's just one of those things where it's important for us to be careful about that. Also, just be careful about how much information you disclose when using social media to make referrals. I think I'm a part of several groups as well where people make referrals all the time looking for therapists. And I think that's a great thing that we have networks like that. But even when trying to get a referral, you want to make sure that when you're trying to do these referrals, that you are not disclosing too much information about that person. So if it's a person you're saying, hey, I'm looking for a client, a referral for a client who's dealing with depression, the person is middle-aged, and you give a couple pieces of information about that, that's one thing. That's not too specific about that. But once again, when you give specific details about the situation they're in and things of that nature, then I think we disclose too much information. So we can use social media for referrals, but be careful how much information you are disclosing. All right, now we want to talk a little bit about creating a social media policy. This is something I think that everyone who is counseling needs to have some type of social media policy written up before they start interacting with clients, and so the clients can know exactly what's expected of them. And so why do you need a social media policy? There's three main things we want to look at. Is that number one, that any information shared on social media can either draw positive or negative attention to your practice. For some people, they feel like, well, any attention is good attention. And I would disagree with you. You don't want any negative attention being brought to your practice. And so with the people who are working for you, if you own a group practice or even in your own private practice, you want to make sure that the information you share is going to draw attention. And what type of attention do you want to draw? Also, for us, we need to be remembered that we are responsible for our brand, and so we want to protect it. And so, especially if you're a group practice owner, or if you're in private practice by yourself, word of mouth gets out quickly. People understand and know what you're doing because of word of mouth. And so, because of that, you want to be responsible for your brand and protect your brand as much as possible. And so, bad social media, bad social media posts that are deemed negative or bad PR can really hurt you quickly. And also, the goal of a policy is to clearly outline your expectations regarding online interactions, to educate the client of risk, and have a clear rationale for how you will or will not engage with clients online. And all this really does, the first sentence basically says the most. We want to clearly outline our expectations of online interactions. What should the client expect of me? What should I expect from the clients? What should I expect from people who work for me? All those things need to be clear. That way no questions can come up later on down the road because we've already dealt with those appropriately. So what should be included in your social media policy? Here's 5 things I think will be very helpful for you to look at. 1, you want to prohibit sharing confidential client or company information. Especially when you think about a group practice, there are individuals who will leave one practice and go to another practice, and there may be certain strategies they use in order to get clients. And so you don't want the people who are working for you or you, for example, to end up sending out confidential client information, company information throughout social media. And so making sure that you are dealing with that in your social media policy, have something to talk about that. Also, just prohibit derogatory content. It's important. And I realize sometimes people's social media gets hacked. That's one of those things that just can't be avoided. But we have to be very careful about what type of information we're putting out there. It's interesting. I've seen counseling practices where they get into the topics of politics and the topic of religion, different things like that. And not that these things are necessarily derogatory, but sometimes once that topic gets put out there, the comment section gets derogatory. And so sometimes it's better to avoid certain topics for social media because it's just not helpful and it's not really bringing or helping build your practice in the least bit. So that's a couple of things I would just consider. Just stay away from any type of derogatory content that's going on there. Also, just encourage in transparency. This is specifically from your practitioners you have, and also from any posts that you do. You know, the more that our clients can understand us as a practice, and understand what we do, that's going to be helpful. And so we want to make sure that transparency piece is being dealt with and talked about. And also, I think transparency can take on a different definition as well. That if we've made mistakes online, or if we've done things we should not have done online in our posts, then let's be transparent about it. Let's take responsibility for our actions. I think people are enlightened and refreshed when they see that going on. So just the transparency can be a very helpful part of this process. And also encourage privacy. That, you know, be careful about what is the purpose behind me making this post. That's always an important thing. Sometimes we will post things just because we're thinking it was a great thing to post, but there's not really a purpose behind that. So I always ask people, what is your why on posting this? And so privacy kind of comes in there, is that I want to make sure that I am being careful about what I put out there into the internet, and that some things that I'm thinking, they need to remain private. It's not necessarily for the public to consumable for the public, and so I'm not going to put that out there. And so I'm just going to make sure I'm mindful of that on the social media policy. And also be responsive to those who interact with you. You will have clients who contact you, whether through email, through your social media pages, things like that. And I've heard so many stories of individuals who've reached out for help and tried to connect with other people. The problem that has come up over and over for them is that when they do try to interact with people, they won't get responses. And so my thing is, if we know we're not checking our emails, or if we know we're not checking our social media, things of that nature, then we need to pull those things down, or at least have something posted that says how often you plan on checking your social media. That becomes a really important thing for your clients to know how to connect with you, and also for your people who are working for you, how often they plan on checking it. And then, which goes back to transparency. The more transparent you can be about that, then people will know how quickly you plan on getting back in touch with them. And so that becomes really important. Well, I hope this video has helped you to get a little bit better understanding about social media and the impact that it's having on us today, and also just the impact it's having on in the counseling relationship. I know ethically I've seen a lot of people who've gotten themselves in trouble because of social media, and a lot of it comes down to, it wasn't the fact they didn't know their ethics, they just didn't practice them. And so I think having a good social media policy is going to be a great way to get started, but making sure that policy is built on a code of ethics that speaks to that directly. I hope this has been helpful for you, and hope you have a great day.